Let's take just 4 or 5 minutes to look at some very surprising aspects of cemeteries around the Irish countryside. Looking at a few of them from the air, we see that they come in all shapes and sizes. We assume they're random bits of land, randomly located, and that they're whatever bit of land was available to be given to the church at the time for burial. The only thing is, when we drill into them, we find that there's nothing random about either the location or the boundaries. We'll go first to Doonbeg and Killard Cemetery on a slope overlooking the White Strand beach. It's a 5-sided polygon, and if we look at the first side, we find that it points us directly to the round tower at Kilmacduagh. Another boundary wall points us directly to O'Brien's Tower at the Cliffs of Moher. A third segment of the boundary wall points us to the stone fort at Dún Ochla on Inishmore, and that's a very impressive stone fort. It's like an intact Dún Aengus, and it's also on Inishmore. The destination point here seems to be a stone structure within the fort. Coming back to Killard, the northerly boundary wall points us to a cemetery 8 kilometres away in Dromaleahy, near Cree. That's where we go next. Dromaleahy is a 6-sided polygon with a couple of parallel sides, and we'll look at those parallel lines first. Taking those parallel lines away to the northwest, we go to Mutton Island, off the coast of Quilty, and there's a tower house out there with an enclosing wall. And looking at our parallel lines from Dromaleahy, we see they sit perfectly on the enclosing walls there. That's not all. If we take those parallel lines away to the southeast, we find that they go into the gardens at Glynn Castle. That's only 20 or so kilometres away across the Shannon. Now, this is the best available Google Earth shot of Glynn Castle. Doesn't provide a lot of detail. I don't know the layout of the gardens or how they may have been changed recently, all over the years. But these kind of alignments would typically reach specific features within such a walled garden. So coming back to Dromaleahy, the 3 other sides we're going to look at there, one of them points us directly to a ring fort just on the south side of Kilkee beside Moore Bay. The southern wall aligns with St. Keyswell at Kilkee. That's a kilometre or so west of the west end at Kilkee. The 5th side from Dromaleahy points us to a ring fort only 2 kilometres away at Kilmacduagh to the southeast. The 6th boundary at Dromaleahy goes away to the northeast, goes 12 kilometres to Killernan Cemetery. And halfway along there at Knocknahilla, this line perfectly diagonally bisects their little cemetery. So let's look at Killernan Cemetery. Firstly, let's look at 2 churches that are aligned with this cemetery. Firstly, there is an old church at Killow, which is beside the M18 near Ennis. The church here in this cemetery is aligned with Killernan. And if we go to Quinn Abbey, we see the main structure of the building there is aligned with Killernan Cemetery in this direction. The other alignments at Quinn Abbey will be for another day. Back to Killernan, there are 6 boundary walls here which have significant alignments. I think it's the most random field in West Clare, but all 6 boundary walls have significant alignments. Firstly, the short westerly wall is aligned with a little island on Lochmore near Kilmihil. Now, this island is also on a line between the Round Tower of Scattery Island and a very prominent stone fort overlooking Ennis. The other southwesterly segment points us to the spire at the church in Milltown Mulbay. The long southern wall is aimed at the round tower at Toomgraney. The short northerly wall is pointed to the Holy Well at Fenlow Cemetery near Newmarket and Fergus. The northwesterly wall is pointed to St. Key's Well, just outside of Kilkee, as was Drumleahy Cemetery. And the northeastern wall is pointed to Carrigerry House, which, as we saw previously, has alignments to Corp Brown Castle, Buncraggy House, and Adair. We could go all the way around West Clare and then East Clare, following cemeteries which are linked together and linked to other historic sites. The question when we look at these cemeteries and their connections to Bronze Age forts, medieval castles, and the country houses of the 18th century, were these always cemeteries? Did they have a different function before they began to be used as burial places? Final thought on these isolated walled enclosures. Not all of them made the grade as cemeteries. Here's an example. It's a couple of hundred metres off the Ennis bypass. It has walls typical of the cemeteries. It is not part of a country estate. And in the same way as the typical cemetery, this enclosure has alignments with Edenvale House and Ruan Church, Craiganoan, Maw Eyre, Quinn Abbey, and a very similar enclosure up near Corofin. It has everything going for it, but just didn't make the grade as a cemetery. What do you think?